Good afternoon. Thanks everyone for joining us, and so glad to be with such a distinguished group of leaders. I was just discussing with the county executive the nice weather that they arranged, so I'll have to have a word later with the mayor because I thought that was a city function actually, that you were in charge of the weather, but we'll clear that up later. Thanks again for the chance to be here and to feature the many ways in which Pittsburgh embodies both the challenge and the opportunities around American infrastructure. And even where we're standing right now is a great vantage point to see the kinds of changes that have been at play. You know, a century ago, the city of Bridges earned its nickname because of infrastructure. And much of that infrastructure was built in order to allow the workers who powered this economy to get from where they might have lived in the hills to their workplaces like the steel mills along the river. And there was a beauty to that cycle because, of course, they were building the steel that would in turn go into bridges like the bridges that were connecting this community and so many others. Now, a lot has changed since a century ago. Obviously, Pittsburgh, in addition to its phenomenal tradition and proud tradition of industry, is increasingly known for 21st century innovation, for medical research, for education, and all of the different layers of a truly modern economy. And yet, for all that's changed, people are still relying on those same bridges to get around, which means they are depending on infrastructure that is in many cases 100 years old. Just earlier today, I had a chance to go out along the Ohio River and see the Emsworth locks and dam, which at over 70 years old are in urgent need of repair. If they failed, or if any of the locks and dam systems along the river failed, that would effectively close the entire port of Pittsburgh, devastating the economy of the region and endangering thousands of jobs. We also traveled under the McKees Rocks Bridge and the West End Bridge. Beautiful structures, but you could see nets hanging just to capture pieces of concrete that could fall off of the sidewalk there. In fact, Pittsburgh has a total of 446 bridges, many of which are in a state of disrepair. And the same is true across this entire country, in large cities and small communities, as well as in rural areas and on tribal lands. That's why we need a generational investment to repair and modernize our nation's infrastructure. And that investment is coming in the form of the President's American Jobs Plan. The President's plan will create... This is the biggest jobs investment proposed in America since World War II. And we're talking about creating millions of jobs, the majority of which would not require a college degree. We're talking about union jobs. We're talking about the greatest level of ambition we have seen in our lifetimes, and the result of those jobs will be a safer and more resilient and more equitable transportation system. We're calling for fixing 10 of the most economically significant bridges around the country and a vision for improving 10,000 bridges overall, which again is going to mean a lot to an area like Allegheny County. It will repair over 20,000 miles of roads and highways so that our goods and people can move around safely. It provides needed funding to upgrade inland waterways, coastal ports, land ports of entry, and ferries, all of which are so important to our nation's ability to move freight. It includes a Healthy Ports program to mitigate air pollution in nearby neighborhoods, which are often disproportionately home to communities of color that are bearing the burden of issues related to emissions. And it doubles funding for public transit so that those who rely on transit can get around more quickly and affordably. Now, beyond transportation infrastructure, we're also talking about providing for universal broadband access. We're talking about replacing 100% of the lead pipes in this country that endanger the future of children, and funding the electric vehicle revolution. And we're proud of the President's vision to do this with American labor, creating millions of prevailing wage union jobs where workers have the right to organize and collectively bargain without the fear of retaliation. And we'll be hearing more from representatives of unions and workers in just a little bit. This has been a demanding and, in many cases, very difficult year for union members. Nearly 1 in 5 members of the ATU local in Pittsburgh have contracted COVID-19. 4 have lost their lives. And yet we are depending on these workers more than ever before, belatedly calling them essential. And so it's time to make good on our obligation to do right by workers, and that's why this administration is committed to protecting transit workers and supporting the unions that represent them. Bottom line is we're not just going to build back to the way things were 100 years ago. We're building infrastructure that's going to make sense for the next 100 years. And to do that means we have to think differently. And Pittsburgh reflects that in so many ways. The Davis Avenue Bridge, just a few miles from here, in 2009, had to come down because it was too dangerous to drive on. Now it's being reconstructed with a vision for pedestrians and bicyclists to be able to walk from their neighborhood or bike to Riverview Park. And we need to make it just as easy to walk or to bike or to be in public transit as it is to be in a car. Because as we do that, as we have an all of the above strategy, that's when we're creating the most efficient system with the least congestion and the least pollution. We also know that this is a matter of equity, because communities of color and low-income communities are less likely to own a car, more likely to rely on public transportation, and more likely to benefit when we mitigate the kind of pollution that has been all too common in these neighborhoods. So I feel a lot of affinity with this community. I come from a river city with a great industrial heyday that was knocked on its heels by economic shocks and made a set of decisions, not to try to rewind to the past, but to prepare for a future that is in keeping with our greatest traditions. After all, the best way that we could emulate the people who built these bridges 100 years ago is to emulate the fact that they were focused on the future and not the past, and act accordingly. Those kinds of adaptations are what's going to make it possible to thrive as we go into the 2020s and beyond. And that's what the American Jobs Plan will make possible. So with that, I have the pleasure of turning it over to someone who has always stood up for this community and for families and communities across Pennsylvania and across the country. Please welcome Senator Bob Casey.
Thanks so much. Well, thanks everyone for being here. I want to thank Secretary Buttigieg for being with us. We have the pleasure today in the city of Pittsburgh to have both Secretaries of Transportation. Madam Secretary, good to be with you as well. And I want to commend and salute the elected officials who are here, Mayor Peduto, County Executive Fitzgerald, United States Representative Connor Lamb, and the men and women of organized labor who are here, represented not just here at the speaker's rostrum, but out in the audience and throughout these neighborhoods as well. We're honored to be with you today to talk about the future. I've often said that when you consider what Secretary Buttigieg just talked about, touring the Ohio River, seeing both at one time both the opportunities but also the challenges that this region faces. You could see it in the bridges that he made reference to, the repairs and the work that has to be done there, as well as the investments we have to make in locks and dams, our waterways infrastructure, something I've been working on for a number of years now. But when I think about these challenges, I'll say it again, I've said it often about the city of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and frankly all of southwestern Pennsylvania. The people of this region, the people of this city, did not wait for the future when they got knocked down. They worked and they invented their own future. And you can see it all around you, the dynamism. No region of the country is better positioned for the future than Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and southwestern Pennsylvania. But the federal government hasn't stepped up. And it's about time that 2 branches of government, 2 houses of Congress, and the executive branch, it's about time the federal government did its part. The people of this region have done their part year after year, now decade after decade, at least 4 decades of rebuilding, 4 decades of lifting themselves up It's about time the federal government made the investment that we're calling for today. The embodiment of that investment is two parts. We're talking about the first part today, the American Jobs Plan. On another day, we'll talk about the American Families Plan. But making that investment is something the people of this city and this region deserve. This isn't something that the federal government should do just because they're trying to extend a hand. This is an investment in the future of this region that the people of this city and this region deserve. We should do nothing less than making sure that the American Jobs Plan passes into law. So it is an investment, and it's an investment not only in the physical infrastructure, but also in the caregiving infrastructure. Home and community-based services, for example, are part of the jobs plan as well. We'll talk more about that, but it's vital that seniors and people with disabilities and the workers who are doing that important work are the subject of our attention and our investment. So I call on folks in both parties, both houses, to get the job done, to come together, to invest in the people of Pittsburgh, to invest in the people of Allegheny County and all of southwestern Pennsylvania. And I don't think anyone knows that story better and cares more deeply about those Pittsburghers and beyond who live in this city and this county. No one has a greater passion for that than Congressman Connor Lamb. I want to thank him for his commitment to helping us pass what will be legislation that will embody the American Jobs Plan. And I'm proud to introduce United States Representative Connor Lamb.
Thank you, Senator Casey, and I want to start just by thanking the Secretary and thanking Senator Casey for spending so much time with us here today. We were just on the river together for over 2 hours, and the fact that that the Senator and that the Secretary with so many needs to worry about in our state and nation would invest that kind of time, and they're about to invest more time at Pittsburgh Airport. Trust me when I say that we rely on that when decisions get made in Washington, funding decisions, regulatory decisions that affect the quality of life here in Pittsburgh. The fact that they took the time to learn about this is really significant for us. It's amazing on that boat tour how many times we heard the word 1930s. We were asking when different things were built, and most of the locks and dams were built in the 1930s. Many of the bridges that we went under were built in the 1930s. And I just kept thinking to myself, if we could go back in time and talk to the workers who built those locks and dams and those bridges, or bring them forward into the future, I think they would be very proud that locks and dams that they built to last 50 years have now lasted almost 90 years and getting close to 100 years in some cases. And I think they would also look at us and say, what's wrong with you guys? Why would you put our community at risk by failing to invest, by failing to make the strong federal investments that Senator Casey talked about, and not rebuild this stuff for your generation? I think the most important term that the Secretary used was generational investment. Every Pittsburgher should be so proud that we come from people that built locks and dams and bridges that can last far longer than anyone expected. That is a testament to the work of that generation. And the work of our generation is to rebuild, redesign all of that infrastructure and do it better, seated for our needs here in the 21st century. And we're lucky to have a county executive who is figuring out how to generate hydropower from these assets we have right here on our river. When those things were built, they weren't thinking about climate change, but now we need to be thinking about how we can get more cargo off the road where it's burning gasoline and onto the river, where you can do it in a much more environmentally efficient way while realizing some green energy benefits from installation on the locks and dams themselves. That's the kind of decision making that we need in the year 2021 in Western Pennsylvania. And yes, it does create jobs, and yes, it will improve our environment, but more than all of that, I think it honors our heritage. It honors who we are and where we come from, which is a community of people in Western Pennsylvania that solves problems for themselves, is not afraid to get dirty, roll up their sleeves, and work with their hands to get things done. But they need us to do our job in Washington to make that possible. That's what today is about. That's what the American Jobs Plan is about. That's what the entire Build Back Better program under the Biden administration is about, and I'm very proud to be part of it. And we're going to make sure that we can get every dollar that we can for Western Pennsylvania. I am now very pleased to announce someone else who is a critical partner in all of this work, our State Secretary of Transportation. PennDOT does so much with the federal funding that we send from DC to make sure it actually gets into our communities and that we get people out on the road rebuilding all these projects. And so with that, happy to introduce Secretary Yasmin Gramian.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman, Senator, Secretary, County Executive, Mayor, Catherine, union leaders. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today. As we stand here today, I have one word at the top of my mind. That word is hope. If you're familiar with Pennsylvania's infrastructure challenges, you may find that surprising. True, our annual state system and multimodal transportation funding gap is above $9 billion. Highway and bridge needs make up $8.1 billion of that annual gap. That sounds daunting, but think of hope. President Biden and Secretary Buttigieg have made it clear that infrastructure is a priority. Just look at Pittsburgh. Its people and industries help build our country. At the same time, it's the birthplace of automated vehicles, the future. Pennsylvania itself, the Keystone State, is the key to and from the Northeast. Our state-maintained roadway system is roughly the same as the state systems in New York, New Jersey, and New England combined. We have the third highest number of state-maintained bridges in the nation. We have public transportation in every single county. Our challenge is great, but there's never been a better time to wrestle it to the ground. With bold investment, we can complete badly needed road and bridge reconstruction. We can improve the assets that get our goods to market. We can reduce costly weight restrictions and closures. We can reinforce those critical transit services that get people to work and keep them connected to their communities. We can and must implement our investments through a lens of equity. The vast opportunities to come from infrastructure investment must lift all boats. It isn't to fix the old. We have to build the new. Our current and future economies demand it. Again, I'm thinking hope. Because on top of this sincere federal engagement, we have meaningful transportation dialogue at the state level. Governor Wolf's Transportation Revenue Option Commission is actively engaged in near and long-term solutions. After years of sharing our funding concerns, in October we established the Office of Alternative Funding to review our options as a department. We're currently collecting public input on a draft planning and environmental linkage study. This study provides the programmatic framework for how PennDOT will study and potentially implement various alternatives. Sorry about that. Alternative funding strategies in Pennsylvania. The public should visit penndot.gov/funding to learn more and provide feedback. Each of these federal and state initiatives is a critical part of the solution, not a solution by itself. And we cannot use last century's funding model to address tomorrow's challenges. The job growth, economic boost, and quality of life we could deliver are incredible. We have to do this. We have to be bold. Looking around us today, I'm so hopeful for the future of Pennsylvania and for our country. It will take all of us to make this happen. I look forward to continued work with our federal, state, and local partners. Thank you for having me today. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald. Sorry, Rich.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, Secretary, and thank you, Secretary, for being here. You know it is a big day when we get both secretaries at the state and federal level coming here with our delegation and all of our partners. I also want to thank their bosses. I want to thank President Biden and Governor Wolf for having such visionary secretaries of transportation that understand what we need, not just here in Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, and southwestern Pennsylvania, but across this Commonwealth and in this country. It has been decades of a lack of investment in infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, the locks, the dams, all the things we've been talking about. And for President Biden to not only have the vision to be able to make up for those needs that have left us behind, but to make his announcement right here in southwestern Pennsylvania shows how important it is. Senator Casey said exactly right. When we got knocked down 4 decades ago, we figured out a way to pick ourselves up and move forward. I would argue right now we have the most diverse economy in the country right now in so many different areas of manufacturing and finance and autonomous vehicles, robotics, life sciences. I could go on and on, but we need our partners at the federal government to make those investments in transportation that we need. Congressman Lamb said it as well. We invested in this a century ago when we were building all these wonderful things that we almost take for granted here in southwestern Pennsylvania. But this American Jobs Act will not only put a whole lot of people to work building it out, and by the way, Secretary, we've got the best trades in the world too. We got the best workers who will be building these roads, these bridges, our iron workers, our laborers, our electricians, our carpenters, painters, they'll be doing the things that will need to be done. But then when they're done, we'll have an economy that can compete with the rest of the world. When other parts of the world, when other countries of this world are out investing us in infrastructure, it means we're not going to be able to compete with them for our children and grandchildren in the future. So I thank the senator and the congressman and the secretary for being here, pushing this, how important it is. It's going to take partnership. It's going to take our friends in Harrisburg. It's going to take our friends locally, our friends in labor. And I can tell you, transit is so important for our workers, especially those workers that can't get to those jobs that are being grown here in big ways. We've got to invest in transit to get those workers here. So I want to thank everybody who's part of this and making this a success. We got work to do. You guys got work to do in Washington. We're supporting you. We want to make sure that this happens. Now let me turn it over to my partner who has the vision and over the last last decade or so has gotten this city moving in a very, very positive direction. And when Secretary talked about hope, that is what we've been able to see over these last couple of years. Hope for our future. And I want to introduce my good friend and our mayor, Mayor Bill Peduto.
Thanks. I got to take 1 second. Congratulations! That's who this is for. They say that the best time to plant a tree is 50 years ago, and the second best is today. We understand that we need to make an investment not only for Pittsburgh today, but for Pittsburgh's tomorrow. That just as what had been handed to us, as the Secretary said, 446 bridges, and man, they're expensive to keep up. All the stairs and the infrastructure was given to us by generations before us. We not only have an opportunity, we have a responsibility to do the same for the next generation and the generation after that. We are living in an age when transportation is being transferred into mobility. And we have a visionary secretary that understands that economic mobility is based upon the ability for people to get to work. And it's not like it was 70 years ago. It's not about building out urban areas around getting into a car and driving to a workplace. It's about all the different modes of transportation being able to be utilized in order to give everybody opportunity, not just those that own a car. When we look at the infrastructure that we have today, we see it's falling apart. And we understand that as we look to invest, we have to fix it first. We have to be able to reinvest in what we already have. But at that same time, just like two tracks of a train, we have to realize that the 21st century is going to give us different challenges and different opportunities, and be able to make those critical investments that Secretary Buttigieg spoke about. The transference to an electric future, and the ability for all to be a part of that. The ability to recognize that all of the different sectors of our infrastructure need upgraded. When we hand off to that next generation this city, we should be able to tell the people that you in the future will never have to worry about lead in your water for your children. That you in the future will never have to worry about raw sewage in a river. That we took care of those problems, and that we recognize that your future is different than our past. And here is the building blocks to build something great. Infrastructure should never be a partisan issue. Infrastructure should be the understanding of our responsibility to those that will follow us. One of those critical parts of it is a strong and vibrant public transit system, one that allows equity as a component of mobility. And it's my honor to recognize our executive director, Catherine Kellman, who has that vision and has that will to make it happen. She just needs a couple good partners.
Good afternoon. I know we've all said thank you, but thank you, Senator and Representative, for being here. Thank you, Secretary. Welcome back again. We look forward to seeing you many more times as we continue to build the best region in the country. Nothing against South Bend. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, County Executive. And thank you, Karima Howard, who will come up after me and is one of my first few friends here in Pittsburgh at Local 85 here at Port Authority. We're standing next to the Mon Incline that for 152 years has been providing safe, effective, and affordable transportation between Mount Washington and downtown Pittsburgh. It is a great example of how development can sustain, grow, and be protected with adequate, responsive, flexible transit. Pittsburgh is an old transit town. Our first bus line started running as a horse-drawn carriage in 1859. And if you catch a Route 5091 on Butler right now, it's the same path. Transportation has made Pittsburgh and Allegheny County happen, and we look forward to seeing how much greater we can make this system. All these are great examples of how communities are created, sustained, and connected through public transit. It's not just the incline, it's the projected development in Carnegie of a mixed-use parking garage that ideally turns into a rail station as we build fixed infrastructure. It's also a new bus garage that lets us further meet the needs here in Allegheny County as we move toward a fully electrified, clean, green fleet and all the strong jobs that come along with this. It creates and improves access throughout our region, and it builds the jobs that help our kids stay here and help build the kind of communities that other people's kids want to come join. Maintaining so we can have this for another 150 years is just as important as growing beyond where we are, but it is a keystone where we can go forward. We understand this investment is critical. We need this investment to go forward as a region. We have come up by our bootstraps. We know that anything is possible. If we can get this investment, we have the dreams, we have the workers, we can get this done. So while we are literally standing next to a Mon Incline overlooking the city on a uniquely beautiful day, We're also standing on the edge of what's an amazing opportunity to continue this needed investment in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. So I'm so excited that we have a secretary who is here, an administration that is supportive of this, both state and federally. And it is my pleasure to introduce Karima Howard from Local ATU 85. Again, one of my first Pittsburgh friends, so come on, wrap it up, Karima.
All right. Good afternoon. And thank you for all of the fighters that are here fighting for our transportation. Good afternoon. My name is Karima Howard. I have been a Port Authority bus operator and a proud ATU Local 85 member for 20 years here in our great city of Pittsburgh. I also serve as the Union Recording Secretary of Local 85. Our local union represents more than 2,200 workers at Port Authority, including maintenance, operators, supervisors, and clerical workers. As we stand here today at the Mon Incline, one of our greatest historical treasures, which opened May 28th, 1870. I'm proud to say that it is operated, maintained by ATU Local 85 members. We are also honored to be a part of this event with Secretary of Transportation. Thank you so much. Our operating vehicles, pardon me. By operating vehicles with poor circulation, with poor air circulation that lacked quality filtration. But this funding by the American Jobs, with the American Jobs Plan, will change that health risk for us. Our members have sacrificed a lot since this pandemic started. Throughout our great union, over 4,700 members have been infected with COVID, including more than 470 right here in Pittsburgh. The ATU has lost 151 members across North America, and 4 members within that number were my very own Local 85 brothers. As President Biden often says, it's just not an empty chair at the dinner table. It's a missing mom. It's a missing dad. It's a missing brother. It's a missing sister. With no clear leadership from Washington last year, as frontline essential workers, we showed up every day with pride, ready to move our city and service our communities. We risked our lives and our families' well-being. But we are very grateful to the Biden and Harris administration for mandating face masks on transit. It has saved lives, and as we have seen, infection rates have decreased. We also thank the Biden and Harris team for the $30 billion in emergency transit operating assistance in the American Rescue Plan. Pittsburgh alone has received $248 million from this bill. This funding has saved our jobs. This is absolutely, in this day and time, an honor to say that we have never had any layoffs here in Pittsburgh, and that is truly a big deal. The funding, that's right. The funding has also helped the Port Authority purchase life-saving PPE for us. So we thank you guys. We thank you for your fight. We thank you for everything that it is that you are doing. The Biden plan, in a very smart way, will provide training, for our mechanics to keep up with the new technology. Port Authority has received 2 electric buses. We expect 15 more by August. The American Jobs Plan will bring many more. 2, it will also provide training to maintain electric buses. And 3, it will bring much needed training to operators like myself so that we can safely operate these new buses efficiently. We can better serve our public while saving our planet. This has been the most pro-union administration in Americans' history. The American Jobs Plan, along with dedicated operating funding from this Commonwealth, will be a game changer for the working people here in Pittsburgh. And having our backs in this investment is an economic security. The American Jobs Plan will invest in better transit opportunities. It will increase good union jobs and secure that union workers are protected. So I ask today, Senator Casey, Congressman Lamb, Congressman Doyle, and oh, by the way, Senator Toomey, if you are listening, let's get this signed and let's get this done. On behalf of our ATU International President, John Costa, we thank you. We thank you for this opportunity, and I want to thank all of you personally for this opportunity.